From cloaks of levitation, symbiote arms, and magnetic webs, here are 24 gadgets, suit powers, and other gameplay mechanics that the upcoming Spider-Man 2 needs. Starting with the gadgets, kicking it off with quite a lot of inspiration from Homecoming, you've got ricochet webs that bounce around until it webs up someone, splitter webs that pretty much does the exact same thing as normal webs, but it would shoot two webs in two different directions rather than just the one, rapid fire webs that fire up to 5 evenly spaced out webs at once in the direction you're facing, and magnetic webs that attract metallic objects such as small firearms and melee weapons. And also, some comics and shows include a flashlight on Spider-Man's belt area that he activates to stun enemies as represented in the Spectacular Spider-Man shows. However, the gadget I want to see the most is a tripwire web, which unlike the current trip mine that webs up an enemy that walks in front of it, this gadget once shot will create a line of webbing from one point to the other, causing enemies to literally trip over it. Or even better, allowing us to utilize it to create a platform for us to walk on during stealth missions to assist us with perch takedowns. Or we can even just use this in a free play to walk around on and do tricks just like that one scene in Spider-Man Homecoming. Shout out to Aegis Ring for suggesting this idea in one of my community posts. Now moving on from gadgets, let's focus on some new suit powers. Because first of all, we have a power for a suit that is already in the game, which is the upgraded suit, which should have the web glider suit power. Once activated, this will allow you to glide from one point to another, and just like the mechanics for diving, the amount you look down or look up will determine the speed you will glide at, and allowing you to be more versatile with the way you glide, and overall allowing you to have a more dynamic way of travelling around the map. Moving on to power number 2, where we also introduce a new suit to house the new power, which is the Spider-Man Homecoming suit, but with a cloak of levitation, which is a reference to the What If shows on Disney Plus, as well as a few other appearances across shows and comics. This suit gives you the power of not only looking cool as you swing across the street with the wind in your cloak, but also being able to float for a short amount of time, just like the low gravity power-up from the Spider-Man 2099 suit. But also another possible power for the suit could be the ability to cast a spell just like Doctor Strange, which will knock out a few nearby enemies. Realistically though, this power would only be doing the same thing as maybe a web blossom or a rock out, but the main difference isn't really the damage it does, but the way it deals out that damage, because it's just more aesthetically different. Moving on to the next suit, we have the Superior Spider-Man suit, which is when Doc Ock switched his mind with Peter Parker, which made Peter Parker become Dr. Octavius and Doc Ock became Spider-Man. But the fact that this suit wasn't already in the original game and that Doc Ock is still alive has given me an idea. What if either in the main storyline or in the DLC, Otto will somehow escape prison, and then to get revenge on Peter for locking him up, he will switch minds with him to have the body he's always wanted, and he will go out to be Spider-Man for some time, while Peter is trapped in Otto's body and trying to make everything back to normal. And by the end, we will be able to play in the Superior Spider-Man suit. And maybe the suit power for this could be the ability to hack the mind of the closest enemy to you to help you in your fight. After the time for the power-up runs out, the ally will come back to their senses and will either wander off confused or would start attacking you again. And last but not least, in the section of suit powers, we have the Symbiote suit, which has 4 suit powers alone. We have the ability to change the arm on the suit to have different weapons that will deal more damage to opponents with each attack. I also want the ability to make a symbiote shield that absorbs incoming damage, just like the energy shield that already exists. We could also be able to shoot out spikes from the suit, just like in the Venom movie, which will deal damage to enemies within a certain radius. But most importantly, we could have the ability to grow extra pairs of symbiote arms that work similarly to the Iron Spider arms, but it will be much more brutal and deadly, reflecting on the dark side of the symbiote, where it has a mind of its own and goes out and attacks enemies in a close range. On the topic of suit powers though, a mechanic I would love to see is being able to choose 2 different powers, one for traversal and one for combat, which are both activated in different ways during the game, which will allow us to use 2 different powers for whenever we choose. This would pair really nicely with the web gliders I mentioned earlier, as well as the cloak of levitation and the already existing slow gravity mode and any other suit powers that could be possible for traversing around the city. And let's take a look at the black suit Spider-Man again, because there is more to the symbiote if we look past suit powers and start to think about the mechanics of how certain things work. Because if we are having a black suit, I would also like it to shoot black webs, and this would also mean that other web-based attacks such as web blossom and web strikes, literally anything else to do with webs, will be black rather than white when wearing any symbiote suit, because rumor has it there will be a black variant of every suit in the game. So it will be cool to see it be unique and impacting other visuals in the game as well, and maybe doing something similar with this with other suits that has different style webbing, such as the Spider-Man 2099 suit having laser webbing just as we see in the Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse trailer. And also, while in a symbiote suit, we should feel the strength of the black suit. This suit enhances the strength of Spider-Man when he wears it, so it will be really cool if we had slight representations of that in the game, such as whenever we land on a wall or the ground, it will shake the screen a bit, and maybe even add damaging to the walls and very small amounts of debris falling from where we landed to show the strength of the suit. It's very optional, but it also a cool cool detail to add. Speaking of small details, I want rockets to explode. Currently in the game, when we take an incoming rocket and sling it back to someone, the explosion it creates is a small blast of webs. No, what is this? If you do this with a grenade, that grenade will full force explode on the others. I want to see the explosion of the rockets on others as well. I know this isn't very friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, but I want to see it go boom. Sorry, now that that's out of the way and on the topic of damage, why not have damaged suits? There is one suit in the game that got damaged during the campaign and Peter had to go repair it, but the unique thing is that this is the only suit in the game that has a playable version of both the repaired suit and the damaged version of it. And seeing as after almost every major battle, we see the suit that we chose to play in gets damaged, so if Insomniac is already rendering a damaged version of each suit for cutscenes, why not make it so that we can choose to play in those damaged suits as well? And we could even have specific designs for some of the suits to reference the movies. And this is also a good example of a point I discussed in my last video, where we can have an option to choose different styles for each suit, rather than placing all these suits individually in the game, where the list would literally be so long and quite unmanageable. Just have the main suit to begin with, which you can click a button like the triangle while hovering over the suit to access the different styles that suit could have, as well as being able to customize certain visual powers of it, such as choosing between the different mechanical spider arms that exist, to even choosing between the different styles of web gliders and parachutes that we want if those do get added to the game, just allowing us to have more of a customizable Spider-Man suit. Enough talking about the mechanics though, because now we are on to some unique finishers that this suit could have. Starting with the symbiote suit, having the tentacles grab people and slam them to the ground, or even strangle them, or just slam into them, again reflecting on the way the symbiote has that negative impact on his mind. And I would also love to see more unique finishers for brute enemies, with maybe, just maybe, being able to pull off this move in The Amazing Spider-Man. However, the most realistic idea that I have that can be added to this game is this move from Spider-Man No Way Home, where Peter runs up and grabs Goblin with his legs and hits him repeatedly with his elbow. Just a shout.